Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, CEO of Treasury Webinars. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar today, Supplier Relationships Matter, Leveraging Technology to Facilitate Collaboration. First and foremost, I would like to thank my webinar thought leadership partner for today's webinar, Supplier. They share my commitment to thought leadership and, more importantly, to empowering the professional success of AP Finance and Treasury professionals. Before we dive in, I'm going to give you a little housekeeping items. If you're interested in receiving a certificate of attendance for today's webinar that you can use to submit for CTP or credit through CPA, NASBA, you'll have to answer all the polling questions and remain on for the duration of the webinar. If you're interested in that, please send an email to Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Also, I'm happy to share the slide deck with you today after the webinar. If you're interested in that, please send an email to Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Also, would appreciate everyone's consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar today, as we still strive to optimize the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. We know there are an awful lot of webinars out there, and we are proud of the fact that ours are unique and we take a different slant on topics that are incredibly important that don't always get the attention of other providers at other conferences. And so we are proud of doing the hard work that others don't have the courage to do in our space. So supplier relationship management to me has become really a passion for me probably over the last 3 or 4 years. I've been doing a lot more speaking, been very involved in the tech space, but especially in the AP automation space. And of course, those of you who don't know, my background's in Treasury. And so as I've done more surveys and research, I've really found that Treasury and AP often work in silos, and that AP professionals don't really have a handle on making data-driven decisions on how and why payments are made. It's not really coming from Treasury either, so shame on us in Treasury for not doing that. And so obviously, with all of the turmoil going on, whether it's the inflationary environment, whether it's global supply chain issues, whether it's geopolitical issues, controlling cash movements is more important than ever. And so for me, I like to point out cash management is not just taking care of cash after you've already got it, but it's about controlling when it comes in and when it goes out. And a key pillar of controlling when the cash goes out is related to the supplier relationships. And so some of the survey work that I've done this year, I've done a lot more survey work in the AP arena, payments arena, is really trying to understand why companies choose payment types, and then on the back end, on the receipt side, what type of payments do companies prefer, and why. But at the end of the day, I know that if companies want to take more control over how and when they make payments, those relationships matter. And those relationships especially matter with these supply chain disruptions. And so everybody's all happy when everything's going well, but what happens if there is a supply chain issue and you really need something? So if you're not paying your suppliers, you're not communicating, do you think they're going to waste their time with you or someone else who has treated them like a relationship? And so those are incredibly important. So I like to start out with kind of where we're going to get to, and then we'll take the road to get back there. But I think it's really important that people communicate up to CFOs. If you're not the CFO, the supplier relationship matters. There are bottom line impacts. There's an awful lot of time spent by AP teams on supplier disputes, whether that's invoices, whether that's early discounts, all those other good things. And so companies should endeavor to know how much time is being spent on those items. And oftentimes those disputes can be traced back to asymmetries of information, or they can be traced back to the fact that there's a lack of visibility. So think about it. Why do we have our AP team spending time on the phone with the same suppliers with the same issues? So there's really no avenues of collaboration there. So obviously that time spent is wasted. It's not being spent on productive value-add activities. So that is a productivity drag, which is a drag on growth, which CFOs, that will get their attention. There'll be less time spent on each type of supplier dispute, so that's another thing we'll touch on. Your team should be tracking supplier disputes and why, putting those in categories, and really being proactive in cutting off any potential disputes. Again, I just mentioned this, more time spent on value-add activities impacts the bottom line. The more control we have over the types of payments that we do, so there is a big difference in the amount of money, hard and soft dollar cost in terms of processing certain types of payments, whether it's a check, whether it's ACH, whether it's a credit card, whether it's a virtual card, and there's also different risk associated with those. So we would like our folks to spend more time on value-add activities. And so again, there are benefits to improving your supplier payment type. What does that mix look like and why? And so for me, Treasury folks should be leading and working with our AP colleagues to really have a portfolio of investments. What are the types of payments that we're making and why? Are we collaborating with our suppliers? Why not? Do our suppliers understand the cost to them for accepting payments? So we'll get into that a little bit later. I am not against virtual cards and ghost cards, but from what I've seen from the surveys that I've done going on the last 3 years, people don't understand the cost for accepting those ghost cards, and even the companies that are leveraging them. So I'm going to pay you with a ghost card. People that are doing that don't understand how much the providers are getting out of that. So on surface, I love it. We can get rebates as long as the other side understands, but I don't like those being pushed on suppliers. Those damage relationships. Also, we can also improve the payment timing. So what is the value of cash, right, on our side versus our suppliers' side? Are there discount opportunities, right? Should we take those? Are we in a position to negotiate those? And are we even taking advantage of the ones that we already have? Usually, it's a little bit different the last couple of years with all the dynamics of COVID and everything, but it's almost always makes sense to take that discount. And then also, supplier relationship done right, it also improves your employee engagement with your AP team and even across your AP team, anyone that's involved in your payments process. And so we hear about all these things, the great resignation, what is it now, quiet quitting, all these other things. So people are happy, more happy if they're not on the phone, right, with disputes all the time, doing manual tasks, right, reworking things, having arguments, even within their AP teams, within their companies, let alone with suppliers. And if they have access to technology, that is going to allow them to spend more time on more strategic activities and deliver more value. They're going to be more excited to stay, right? Retention, but it's also can be a way to get talent in the door if you need to do that as well. And then also it improves our business agility because those relationships can give us the ability to collaborate, right, on those payment types and payment dates without impacting our relationships and the things that we need to have done. It also improves the predictability, right? So especially on working capital side, we want to know, right, when payments are going out the door and why, but we need to make sure we don't damage those relationships because we need our products to deliver products, right? If we don't have the products to make our products, talk about manufacturing, then our revenue is going to go down. That's going to cause a bad impact on the bottom line. So just want to say, here's 7 reasons right now where supplier relationships matter, and they matter. We'll talk about the whole life cycle. Each type of communication matters. That relationship starts with supplier onboarding, and that relationship should be communicated, and we should be working with procurement and treasury. So AP, treasury, AP, procurement should be working together to manage those supplier relationships. So we need to be thinking about that, especially as we're going in to 2000, what is it? Who knows? 20 something. I'm an old man. I don't even remember. Next year, 23, 24, whatever it is. Too much cold medicine maybe. But so we need to be thinking about those things. Just taking a look at our terms and conditions, because there are ways to take control over the types in those contracts. So we want to make sure we're looking at that. We don't want to hinder ourselves in terms of type and timing if it's in the contract, right? You're not going to have a lot of leverage to negotiate if those things are in your contracts and you have things in your contracts that you don't like. It's what happens if you don't have that relationship, right? And you want to change something, guess what? Too bad, it's in the contract, right? So I also wanted to share some survey results. So I really like to share some survey results as well. So the previous page were just things from my experience, my relationships, my knowledge, and my surveys that I've done and seen. So here's a quick poll survey from the APQC. APQC does a lot of really good research, processing, benchmarking. I've worked with them on surveys in T&E management and treasury. So I have the source there. Again, if you're interested in receiving the slides from today's presentation, the hyperlink will work there. But some of these you'll see that I didn't mention, but all of these, right? Improved supplier reliability, as I mentioned, reduced risk. How about improving customer service? Wouldn't that be nice? We should consider how we are being a service to our suppliers, simplifying process that reduce costs. How about that? Competitive advantage, right? In our industry, if we have the best supplier relationships, guess what? When things happen in the supply chain, if we have the best relationships, we are going to get what we need, right? And so that gives us a competitive advantage, gives us business agility, limit pricing volatility, so reallocate employees to higher value tasks. So again, there are significant benefits to supplier relationship management done right. I like to call that SRM. So it's been in for years, but I've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years. You know, we have all this investment in CRM, right? Salesforce and all those other things, and we're finally starting to catch up with this whole idea of supplier relationship management. We need to make it frictionless to do business with us, right? Whether that's our customers or whether it's those that we need to add value to our customers. So what about supplier relationship dynamics? Let me go ahead and launch our first polling question here. I'm just asking you to share how you characterize the level of visibility of your company relative to all AP processes and supplier communications. Just want to kind of level set the lay of the land here. And it's something that you really want to think about, something that you want to lobby for, right? I say you can't manage what you can't see. You can't see the bottlenecks. You can't see the trends. You can't see the right questions that you need to ask. And so really having technology that empowers its visibility is really the first step in my mind to optimizing your supplier relationships, but also the control of payments, which is what it's all about. For me, control of payments, but also the predictability as well, so we can optimize our working capital. So let me go ahead and leave that polling question up for another few seconds or so. Then we'll go ahead and take a quick peek at the results. If you haven't answered the polling question, please make sure you do that. Really appreciate it. It only takes a second. Hopefully I'm entertaining enough for you to pay attention to click a button. Maybe not, if I'll need to find another job next year. All right, let's go ahead and close the polling question. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek here. So glad to see that 7% of you are ideal. So I'd be happy to know how you've achieved that, right? I'm happy to follow up after the webinar. So those of you, so we have 33%. So we have 2/3 that can't say it's good or ideal. So we have some work to do. And then the question is, how do we make that happen, right? Are there things we can do internally? Is there existing technology? Are we looking at our tech stack, right? Are we looking at AP automation? Are we looking at investing in treasury, cash management? What are we looking to do in 2023? And then as we're looking at adding to the tech stack, are there benefits in this area if we lead an AP automation investment or payments, right, that we can realize those benefits, but also if the tech stack is being upgraded elsewhere, we want to take a look and see if that technology can help us in this area. So visibility is incredibly important. So again, I encourage you to lobby for that. And again, we already shared with you, this is the value proposition. This is your business case just for supplier relationship management, right? Which is all part of optimizing your payments and minimizing your AP processing cost while minimizing your risk as well by maximizing the timing of cash outflows, right? That's a mouthful. All right, thank you so much for taking the time to answer the polling question for us. And so let's talk about dimensions and dynamics. And so again, there are several pieces of supplier relationship management, so we're probably going a little bit deeper than most of you have seen, but this is incredibly important. These are things that we need to be thinking about. We need to be making data-driven decisions or empowering our AP and Treasury teams to do the same. So the first thing we need to do is obviously procurement fee. We need to identify our suppliers, but we also need to vet them as well. We'll talk about that a little bit. We have to figure out if we're even allowed to do business with certain companies. There's a lot of things going on overseas, so we need to make sure that there are not any regulations or requirements where we're not supposed to be doing folks with some. We don't want to get any sanctions and all that and all those related issues. We don't want to get in those things. And then we have contract negotiation and management as well. So that's another piece. A big piece of that is on the visibility side. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to pull up those contracts that you're on payments, right? Contract negotiation and management. And then once we're there, we have supplier onboarding, which is something that's getting more attention. I've been really happy to see over the past few years, we've had investments in supplier portals. And then again, I mentioned we want to be cognizant of the payment type, right? How are we paying our suppliers? What is the timing? How are we paying them? Are we taking discounts? And then on a related note, okay, if we're doing batches of payments, how are we doing that? When I was in manufacturing, we did check runs like twice a week, and that was how we did it. Was there any data behind that? No. Should there have been? Absolutely. So again, we want to look at the payment type and payment timing, and there might be differences, right? It might make sense for us to do a check run twice a week. Well, we might want to do wires or ACH. We want to do ACH every day, right? So we need to take a look at, now we have real-time payments, right? So we can hang on to that money as long as possible. And then there's also, of course, not everything's perfect. So supplier dispute and issue management. So we want to be able to have a central location where the data exists, where we can see all the communications around the dispute. And we want to be able to create reports and see how efficiently or inefficiently we are at managing any issues that we have. We want to be able to classify those issues, look at those trends. Is it by customer? Is it by industry? Is it by country? So we can start to be a better partner to our suppliers. And then all these together are all the dimensions of that supplier relationship management, right? How do we communicate with them? How do we get predictability? How do we take control, right, of the payment type and timing? So it might not be possible. So at the end of the day, everyone might be telling you, hey, you don't need to write checks. Everyone should be on a virtual card. Well, maybe in theory from your perspective, but that's just not the way that the world works, and there can be damage to trying to force people to do that. So we don't necessarily want to take that. What I tell people is see where you're at in terms of your portfolio in different buckets, right? Where is it that it makes sense to inspire your suppliers to go? Some of the supplier portals actually let the suppliers choose how they need to be paid, right? So you might want to let them do that, but then also educate them after the fact so they feel like I have control, and then educate them and say, well, do you want to really think about this? And then explain to them. This is something that we don't talk about enough. AP on my side means AR done more efficiently on the side of our suppliers, right? So boom, we're going to pay you. We're going to get that remittance information. We're going to make your AR team, they're going to look like rock stars. So we need to be honest in the costs and benefits of us paying in a certain type and of our suppliers accepting that, but also in terms of the timing of those payments as well. So those things are all important. So those are all things that are really important. So we'll kind of walk through some of the different areas, talk about what's happening, what goes on, and really we'll talk about how technology can facilitate that. And of course, we will always along the way be hitting on how technology is really allowing us to collaborate more efficiently. Again, a big part of that collaboration, which we'll see, is going to be visibility. But the other part of it is that sometimes I talk about quite often, you have to communicate before you collaborate, right? So communication, if you're not sharing information that's relevant, and no one's paying attention to what you're doing, it's not inspiring actions, it's just information. when everyone shares the same information, comes to a decision that both can live with, and that's what we call collaboration. So let's not be confused when we're out there talking about collaboration. You need to communicate, right? And then that leads to collaboration. And so just real quick, I know I'm getting in the weeds a little bit here, but I'm one of those people that likes to live in the weeds. And if you understand the weeds, it helps you have more informed conversations, really understand where the value lies and where some of the bottlenecks happen. So it's important for you to invest in that. So talk about to ensure suppliers payable, right? We're allowed to pay them. We're going to need some supplier contact information, a method to contact them. Again, we talked about this a little bit. We need to determine if there are any blacklists. One of them is OFAC SDN, but some of the solutions out there do this automatically. This is something that you need to be doing, especially now if you're having a supply chain crunch, right? You might have to you should always be looking to be 2 or 3 suppliers deep if that's possible. And so you may be looking at other countries that you might have never looked into before. So it's important that you are doing so and making sure you're checking all the boxes regulation. We talked about that. We're going to have to look at the payment methods. Again, we talked about the different methods. Electronic options reduce paper check use, and they can be easier. The supplier, again, we can offer multiple payment errors, right? We'll talk about this a little later. Important side on the payment side is the payment instructions, especially if they're electronic payments. And so ways to gather and validate account data, not only what you get in, but also the ability to change that data. We'll talk about this in a little bit. One of the big advantages of supplier portals is that really offloads that payment risk information to your suppliers. And so if we're not managing that internally, that is responsibility of suppliers. If money gets redirected the wrong way, we can show that, hey, it was someone at your company that was able to go in there and redirect that. Now we can certainly send them an email and say, just wanted to touch base and make sure you guys actually change this, but that offloads some of the risk on your side. We have to have some tax documents, some FATCA requirements. And so gather tax ID up front, right? And so some of the supplier portals do really well on this, and it tracks, okay, these are the documents that we need. So it goes out to the suppliers, and your folks aren't just sitting there chasing these documents. If you've never been involved in this before, it's not fun. It can take a long time. So you want it, you're especially if you're manufacturing, I want to do this. We don't have the supply. We have to have all these documents first, so we got to chase them around. Where are they sent, right? How do we get them in? How do we track that? So we need to have a central system that allows us to do that. And then some folks, I think it makes it easier to some people an invoice. So that's a good way to do that. So uploading an invoice is a good way to help us with that processing workflow. So just a little kind of a journey in the weeds there. I'm going to go ahead and ask our next question, which I found interesting in several surveys I've run the past couple of years. Just getting your preference, as much knowledge as you have. What's your company's preferred way to pay suppliers to the best of your knowledge? Is it checks, ACH, credit card, virtual card, ghost card, or E would be you have no preference? I would say also in there, business as usual. Right? We don't like to upset the apple cart. So especially when I was in manufacturing back in the day, a lot of this was just based on how we've done things historically. So those of you who are interested in receiving CTP credits, or certificate of attendance, CTP, CPA credits, you'll have to answer all the polling questions. So please make sure that you do that. Again, if you're interested in receiving a copy of the slide deck, please just go ahead and send me an email, Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys another few seconds. Our response rate isn't quite as much as it was earlier, so you guys are probably, yes, I'm going to get out of the weeds of supplier onboarding, so just go ahead and push the button. Give us a vote. All right, go ahead and take a quick peek here. Let's go ahead and close. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek. And we see 11%, checks, 75% ACH, and then a couple others on virtual cards and have no preference. So I'll tell you, I'm happy to see that. But from the research I'll share with you in a little while, you'll see that checks are much higher there in terms of being cost effective. I would say that ACH would be a way to go, and ACH is really it's different in you're going from checks to electronic payments, but it's really something that people can understand. They're not really getting into the virtual card and ghost card, and your suppliers aren't getting hit with a pretty significant fee to accept those kind of payments. And then if you have no preference, that's just something that you might want to take a look at. Again, just some basic conversation with myself or someone else, research, seeing how much the cost. It's gotten a little tighter, but always was checks are 10 times as more costly to process than an ACH, and I don't think that multiplier has gone down all that much, especially if you're doing a meaningful amount of payments. And this goes for anything, right? So supplier relationships, let's talk about that, but let's also not forget, if we're talking about payments types, let's also talk about T&E reimbursement as well. Just a little sidebar. You want to make sure that you are not pushing those checks out for that. That's really costly as well, and see if you can get that on ACH, but that is a whole nother webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to do that. And so again, we're just kind of going down the list. Onboarding matters, supplier payment types matter. So processing cost, it varies by payment type. So again, you'll see studies. I've got some research studies if you're interested. But what you see are that there are differences. Checks are the most costly, and I don't think I've ever seen a study that says otherwise. Some of the electronic payments, the multiple is lower, but some companies are more efficient on different payment types. Again, the magnitude of that productivity varies by payment type. Also the risk exposures, but also on the side of your suppliers, their processing cost varies by payment type, and their risk exposures vary by payment type. And so that's definitely something that you should keep top of mind. So being that partner as well. So it matters, right? So that's something we need to get into our head. Are we making data-driven decisions? Are we giving our suppliers the opportunity to choose what they would like? So just to kind of go back to that supplier portal, if there's a supplier portal, and use various functionality in there, but getting your suppliers on board, having a central repository for relevant information, you're going to eliminate asymmetries of information there. You're going to be able to offload some of the payment risk if your suppliers are managing their own bank account relationships. It's also a good way to make sure that you have the master files associated with your suppliers structured the right way, so where you're making payments, so a good check on that master record. So maybe you have we had an ERP system back in the day. We had big suppliers and they had all these subsidiaries, and all those things got messy in there, and where payments were going and why, and open balances and asymmetries of information. So supplier portal is really a vehicle to help you collaborate with your suppliers, and so that's something that you definitely want to look at. If you're not involved in AP, you might just have a conversation and ask them. If you are working with someone through an AP automation solution provider or leveraging supplier portals, I think those are important. That is a way that technology can help you better manage your customer relationship. So let's go ahead and take a peek at some of the survey data. Like I said, I got some survey data. I think it's coming out next week. If you're interested in that survey, please let me know, email, and I'll share that with you. So this is surprising me. I've seen this 2 or 3 years. So a lot of companies prefer to pay by check. So people say, checks are going away. They're not going away. And also the way that companies prefer to be paid is a pretty similar number. I don't know why. So the float is gone. So the good news is most of you on the webinar, you see that You know, I would say from a cost perspective and a risk perspective, checks, you know, I don't get it. You know, maybe you think you're playing the float, but with all the advancements, the float is not really, it's not really there in a meaningful way anymore. So I would say it's something that we really wouldn't want to do. So for me, you know, I would look at the cost, right? I would look at the cost and I would look at the risk to my company. And then the other side of it can be companies might feel in the past it's easier to pass along remittance information associated with our open invoices to our suppliers, but that has definitely changed as well. And so we can leverage ACH and other types of electronic payment and make sure that that remittance information gets along so our suppliers are efficient in cash application, which is a nightmare in and of itself when not done right. We've done webinars on that as well. So payment types, right? We said, preferred way to pay suppliers. Okay, well, what do we prefer? I mentioned earlier, for me, if I was the treasurer, I would want to have a collaborative relationship with our suppliers and just see where we at right now. All right, why are we paying our suppliers that way? And then especially as we are onboarding new suppliers, let's give them the option to tell us how they'd like to get paid, and then we might want to have a conversation after that. So we also asked on the same survey I mentioned, you know, do you collaborate with suppliers with your payment types? So we have 30% agree and let them choose. A lot of those folks are leveraging supplier portals, which you can enable. You don't have to enable that, but you can enable them to choose. 34%, if they ask, you work with them. 21%, they don't really pay attention to it. 11%, it's most cost effective. I think that number is probably, unfortunately, going up. They're doing it without knowing it. So some of the smaller AP automation / payment providers out there, they actually force payments by virtual cards, which I'm sorry, I just do not recommend that. I'm not trying to pick on anyone out there, but that's really damaging to supplier relationships to force that type of payments and to force that type of haircut. If you're willing to take the haircut in your pricing and being honest with that, that's different. So just interesting to see, right, what level of collaboration is out there. And so there are ways to gently nudge your suppliers in a certain way, but especially in today's world, every supplier is important, but especially with your key suppliers that can hold up your business and really impact your bottom line. I would say it's very important that you have an open and honest relationship with your suppliers relative to collaborating with them. Look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then, okay, let's see what we can do there, but let's also look at going forward. What is the best ways for us to do that? Okay, we look internally, we'd like to pay suppliers this way. Is there a way for us to get that into the procurement, work with them in the contracts? Can we put it in there? Can we have different costs associated, right, with paying them a certain way and kind of nudge it that way, right? Your supplier portals, and also on the timing as well, right? You can look at that as well. You don't want to give away those terms, right? You know, you can negotiate the terms. You might want to stretch those out, but you might want to look at maybe you can negotiate discounts if you pay within that. So you can say, hey, I want a discount if I'm doing net 30, right? I'll do no discount, but that's 90 days, right? But you have to work on those as well. But there's different levers that you can work with to take control of how and when you make payments. But again, you want to look at your contracts and see how they're worded to make sure that you are not giving away that control unless it's a conscious decision. So that's really important. So one of the things we obviously want to look at collaboration. So we talked about how the whole theme is how we leverage technology. So we asked our survey respondents, aforementioned survey, are you going to collaborate more with Treasury in 2023 versus 2022? Good to see. Increase was 42%. That's to me is very strong. Decrease, maybe they've adopted some sort of solution where where that is already set, so they're in good shape on that. But it's just interesting to see that this is on the radar of AP leaders, controllers, finance. So this is on the radar, which is the first step in that, and they realize that collaboration with Treasury matters, and collaboration matters in terms of just in AP, just maybe they don't understand, they've never been, maybe you don't share with them, right, the costs of processing, the risk and those things. Maybe you're not doing a good enough job educating them. Oh, okay, understand that. So how can we work with you to understand how to communicate with our customers, especially in communicating the value to our customers, right, to their AR teams and making their AR more efficient. So there should be collaboration in terms of programs, if there's going to be programs in terms of converting suppliers to payment types, or new or suppliers that are coming on board, having those conversations. How does procurement have those conversations early on in the process, not only in terms of type and timing of payments, but it can also be things in terms of the currency as well, right? That definitely never gets mentioned. So we also want to look at the payment terms in terms of the currencies that we're being paid in, especially as we're paying, especially as we're going across borders. We don't want to create currency risk exposures, and then it also creates a risk exposure in terms of, if you don't have predictability, your team can be entering into foreign exchange currency contracts that aren't ideal, and so you're causing other problems on the board as well if those contracts are set up in the wrong currencies and people don't understand the importance of that. So I'm going to do a little tangent here. This issue really came to me. This is obviously a big supplier. We are building a plant in Mexico. So the contract was to be negotiated in US dollars. I was ready. Of course, I had the dollars ready. Okay, all of a sudden I get an email. We need to make the first payment for the contract in 2 days, and I get it, and it's in pesos. And I'm like, we're not paying this in pesos. And they're like, well, they're not going to start. So what did I have to do? I had to go out and do a spot transaction. And if I looked at what I would have done it at, had I used some hedging tool back when they were talking about this, well, let's just say it cost somebody a lot of money. So those are things we need to consider, and also talks to the value of collaborating with Treasury. And then I do want to dig in on virtual cards. So just to put some numbers behind my assertions, again, if it's communicated correctly, I absolutely see the value in virtual and ghost cards. Absolutely, I would love it if AP could mitigate their costs. I don't like the words AP as a profit center. That shouldn't be your objective. So that would normally involve pushing ghost cards and virtual cards on your suppliers, right, without notification of what the benefits and costs are. So I don't like that. So I've seen good adoption. So we see 58% of the folks we surveyed last couple of years. So we've seen over, so there's a lot of hype there going on. So we are seeing some adoption, but here is where I take a little different slant on my surveys. I ask them, do your suppliers understand the cost of accepting virtual cards, right? So we have 64%. Only 64% can agree, right? Think about that for a minute. Well, I'm pushing these virtual cards on my suppliers. They don't really understand the cost, and you can say, well, that's not my job. Well, it is your job. It's your that's your client. So that's your relationship. It kind of is your job, in my opinion. That's just my opinion on my relationship philosophy. So, okay. So I believe there needs to be some communication there. Let's make an educated decision. Now, you might want to split, right, the difference on what they're getting hit at, right, on their side. So what's the cost to them? What's the cost to you of using virtual cards? And the next question is, do you understand the benefits of the people that are pushing you to use their products? Do you understand the benefit of leveraging virtual cards, right? And then we had 69% agree, but almost 30% said they don't. So, well, so we're using this product. So you're probably taking a haircut, right? They're giving you a rebate. So what's the rebate? How much are they getting out of it, right? Are they doing all the work? Are they converting folks? Are they causing issues with your suppliers? I would caution those that use programs, make sure that you are control of the messaging that's going with your suppliers, to make sure that messaging is consistent with your branding and your approach, and not too aggressive there. So I just wanted to point out that virtual cards, good or evil, I would say it just depends how they're leveraged, how you're collaborating with your suppliers, but also with those that are processing those virtual card payments and offering that to facilitate those payments for you. So just something that you need to think about, right? Payments are important, collaboration is important, and when our suppliers are asking us questions about the different kinds of payments, we need to be able to answer those questions, empower our people, empower our procurement people to have these conversations with honest answers. Payment timing. So we talked about timing. We talked about supplier portals, how they can be valuable for technology, and then just the time value of money, the timing. What is it worth your company to have dollars today versus having it in the future? And part of the timing conversation for me just starts with, what discounts do you currently have offered to you? Are you taking advantage of those? Why and why not? So if you're not taking advantage of those, my question is why not? So that should be a metric. Okay, this is the amount of dollars we have potential for. This is the amount of dollars that we are taking, and this is why that we are not taking them. And then to understand, is there the opportunity for us to negotiate? There's some solutions out there where you can negotiate in real time. Hey, I'll pay you whenever if you take 1% less, 2% less, 3% less, and sometimes it's more extreme than that. So, so it may be really important for your suppliers to have money, and it may be worth it to you to have that discount on your side. So again, payment timing matters. To ask yourself these questions: is your company leveraging existing discounts? Do your suppliers understand the value of payment timing? And then is your company missing out on potential discount opportunities? And so the more visibility that we have, right, the more asymmetries of information that we eliminate with our suppliers, we can communicate with our suppliers in real time, whether within the portals or even within the AP automation solutions. You can communicate about specific invoices within these technologies as well. So that technology facilitates really real-time collaboration, facilitates collaboration across time zone, facilitates collaboration amongst your AP team and all the others who impact payments as well. So now let's talk about supplier issue and dispute management. Again, we touched on the technology side already, but here's some data, the cost of managing inquiries. I got some data from the IOFM. 15 to 20% of invoices generate inquiries. Think about that for a minute. How many invoices are you getting? So, and depending on the company you're at, a lot of those inquiries are probably things that are repeat inquiries, and there's no reason for them, right? Technology can help us mitigate those, help us collaborate. It takes an average of 5 to 20 minutes to handle an inquiry. I would say I'd lean more towards the 20 minutes from what I've heard. So just multiply those numbers, right? Hundreds of invoices a month, 20 minutes, right? For tens of those every month, right? And over 60% are related to invoices already paid. Think about that, right? So that to me, it is a real head scratcher. So you're going by there. Obviously, you think about something there may be a dispute on discounts taken, short pay, all that good stuff. But these are things that we can mitigate with the right information, visibility, the right reporting on all the different ways to look at root causes of these issues. And so at the end of the day, what we're saying is inefficiently managing inquiries, it could have a huge impact on your bottom line, and it causes friction with your suppliers. All these different inquiries, all these issues, they cause friction We are human beings, right? So it's going to cause issues. It's going to make our AP team unhappy. It's going to impact our AP staff retention. So I want to share some data from 2021 that I had, just because I ask a little bit different questions. And some of these, I would say the percentages are probably lower. They're really, in some sense, based on the level of adoption of AP automation and certain solutions and functionality among the survey respondents. But if you look at the issues themselves, I would say these are all going to resonate. And then, if nothing else, these give you a conversation starter, right? You're talking to your AP team, you're talking about supplier relationship management. All right, what are the issues that take up the most time? Ask about these, then figure out why. Okay, how can the right technology help us with these? Do we already have the technology where we could help mitigate these and we're just not leveraging the solution we've already invested in to improve that relationship? So 31%, right, timing of payment, not surprising. This one, need more information to process the invoice. I mean, that one to me screams out as something where technology it can be extremely helpful, because usually it's going to be a trend, right? So I'm not sure if I get to this question in this webinar, but I've asked before, there's frequency of duplicate issues over and over and over. So if more information is needed to process an invoice, okay, we're going to collaborate, right, on the invoice, right, to make sure that we get that information and not use that as an excuse, right? We shouldn't train our people to say, well, I don't have the information I need, right? This is the same information you got last time, so we got to make sure that there's some honesty there. Discount related, so clarification of invoice information, more information. See, I think these are related, so I think that requesting same information is probably a little bit low, but to me, this more information and process of invoices is I don't know, it's to me, it seems a bit odd. If we have the right relationships, right, if we're set up the right way, we need to request the information that we need. There's an incentive for us, right, to make that payment when it's most optimal to us. And we don't need to be making up issues that we don't have the information we need on your invoice. So to me, the information, obviously, certain things are important, that bank account information, the amount, things like that. But for me, it's hard to imagine if you're asking for too much information, you need to negotiate on that. But again, just food for thought. Then we wanted to ask folks if they track supplier issue categories and dispute times. And this is something that's really important and can help you build the business case for better supplier relationship management, but also investing in AP done right. So to me, interesting to see medium and enterprise. It's not real surprising, that they are higher, but only 71%. So that still means 29% of companies don't track issues and dispute times. So I guarantee any enterprise company that doesn't do this is going to look at that and see they don't have any idea how much of a negative impact that has on their bottom line. That can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Those efficiencies come right off the bottom. Once you fix those, they come right off the bottom line. That'd be nice to go to the CFO. Hey, we just started tracking categories, dispute times. We're making more control of payments. We're able to do these payments types and timing. I just saved us $500,000 a year, and that's Christmas present. It keeps on going, right? So the other thing that we want to know and helps us with our relationships. Again, I'm showing you technology. This is helping our relationships. If we understand how to categorize, how to dispute, what does that let us do, people that have done this before, like me? Root cause, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know the cause of the disputes, right? We looked at this by company size. And so where you stand depends on where you sit, but this is something that's interesting to look at. See, I need to hire a graphics person because I gotta miss a line here on documents communication with suppliers, but it's just interesting to see, right? Access to supplier activity. 28% of the companies surveyed say that's a root cause. Why don't you have access to that? Maybe it's because you work in silos, right? maybe we have asymmetry of information. That's because we don't have access to supplier activity. Too much paper, manual process, right? Our systems in general, I thought that would be higher, but really interesting to look at this data if you have more time. After the webinar is over, there's a lot of really good information here, but just thinking about, right, if you get to that point, you're doing it, take a deeper dive in the root cause and why it takes so long. Just look at all these different, so let's take a look at technology. Technology, can that address access to supplier activity? Yep. Mitigate asymmetry of information? Yep. Help us better facilitate communication documents exchange? Yep. Mitigate managing in silos? Well, that can be a political thing, but technology can help us do that. Too much paper? Yep. So we start to see that the business case is being made here, but you're seeing that technology facilitates better communication, and better communication is facilitated by having access to the right data at the right time and being able to communicate effectively in as much real time as possible, and also being able to identify trends and being proactive in our supplier relationships, so we're not spending time on the phone with the same suppliers or having the same issues with different suppliers. So let's go ahead and get a polling question in here. I'll give you guys a break from my content here. Which of the following does your company experience most with suppliers? Just interesting to see where you fall versus some of the survey data that we looked at. More information, a process invoice, timing, discount, clarification, or requesting the same information. Often, again, just the one for your company. Again, where you stand depends on where you sit. I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds, then we'll take a quick peek. Then I'll give you my color commentary on the results, and then we'll take a look at the results of that, and we'll take a little slice by company size and take a look there. So those of you of different company sizes in the audience can really resonate with that, more apples to apples, benchmarking it with where you sit in terms of your company. So let's go ahead and leave the polling question up. Another few seconds. Let's go ahead and close that, and then we'll go ahead and share. So we're all going to have to keep some mental notes here. So we have 21% more information. Timing is the highest at 39%. That lines up with what we saw earlier. Clarification of invoice information. So pretty good, solid mix. Really good for you guys to see it on the lower end, not discount related issues. I'm requesting the same information. So again, it's just one that speaks out to me as clarification of invoice information. So just more collaboration with your suppliers, leveraging technology, to make sure that there's those invoices that we're generating, that are getting to us, or what we need to get paid is important. So let's go ahead and hide those. Let's take a quick look here. Again, pretty timing of payment again is larger. We see more clarification of invoice on the smaller companies here, and we still see more information requested. I mean, that really stands out to me. So in that setup and having that issue over and over again. So if you're seeing that issue 30% of the time, I've got to believe that is coming from the same supplier. So maybe some standardization on that front, making sure you get the same information, from everyone, suppliers. That would be a good thing. So as much as that is possible. And then if you use tools, such as machine learning and AI, there's actually ways. So if it's from the same supplier and you keep on making corrections and inputting information, the system can automatically put that in for you. Of course, we don't want to automatically put in routing information and payment information, but if it's just things that allow you to get those invoices processed, those are things that can help as well. So let's talk about AP, talent, and supplier relationship. And so what I say, just to be a little cheeky here, does your AP team like to argue about invoices? Does your AP team like to have the same conversations with the same suppliers? Does your AP team spend time on non-valid activities? Does your AP team like to work in silos? The answer for that, of course, is no, 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 no. right? So why don't we mitigate those things? We already talked about the values, but what about the value to your AP team? Removing the productivity drag from them, you're impacting the bottom line. You are giving them an incentive to be retained, right, and be happy. So, what we like is, again, the cure for the relationships, headaches for me, I think hopefully I've hit this enough, is technology. So just again, it's a little bit older survey, but we asked what's the one thing that would improve relationships the most. Interesting is slow approvers, but that's your internal part. We can do that with technology. Approvers complaining too much paper, manual processing error. So you can see, really ask this question internally, right? And I would say that the technology is going to help you address all of those as well. So just wanted to point that out as well. Have some additional information on the back end. I wanted to get through things. So I have some more information here if you'd like a copy of the presentation today. Just gets more into the onboarding and the value of leveraging a supplier portal. So just want to touch on that a little bit more. Talked about these. You can mitigate risk exposures, mitigate time spent, and lets us have proactive relationship. So just looking at the technology landscape a little bit, what companies are using, have been using. So people back in 2021, I don't think this has changed a whole lot. Unfortunately, a lot of enterprises are still using ERPs. We're seeing some good adoption there, primarily email. That can be dangerous in ways. So and I'm seeing value, again, a combination of these, right? But I like to see the AP automation solution that has that vendor portal, and then the email is going to be managed somewhat, and the communication can be managed through those tools as well. And then I love this question. As technology hinders your relationship impact, helps the quality? So this is something you should ask. So this is disturbing. This is from 2022. Only 34% say it helps, right? Your technology should help the quality of your supplier relationships. It certainly shouldn't hinder them. And so you should endeavor for your technology or investments in AP-related technology to help your relationships. I showed you already those many ways which it impacts the bottom line. Just interesting. We asked folks, upcoming survey, technology upgrades for AP. Good to see that. 39%. So a big percentage hopes it will, but it won't happen. So that's exciting as well. Let me go ahead and get our final polling question launched here before I wrap things up. I would appreciate everyone's consideration in answering our polling question today, courtesy to myself, but also a courtesy to my thought leadership partner, to Palti. Again, without them, this webinar would not be possible, and very few providers would allow me to spend my time with you having zero words about their product, more about supplier relationship. So again, I want to just, in closing, the bottom line impacts, supplier relationship done right, less spent time on supplier disputes, fewer supplier disputes, more time spent on value-add activities, improved supplier payment timing management, employee engagement, and improve business agility. Also, of course, I want to once again thank my thought leadership partner, Palti. They share my strong commitment to thought leadership, but also impacting the career success of finance, AP, and treasury professionals. And I can tell you one way which they do it, which no one else I've seen does it. Palti powers the Gen F community, which is all about letting people give back to each other, really optimize their soft skills, mentoring, leadership, career management. So if you haven't seen what we've got going on in Gen F, please reach out to me. So that's really exciting. I look forward to working with Palti in 2023, webinars, in-person events, but also really building out the Gen F community as well. To those of you in the audience, each and every one of you. As always, I want you to know that I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. If you don't make my last webinar of this year, later this week, I wish you all safe and happy holidays and a happy new year. I appreciate each and every one of you. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.